I feel like I grow more with each game I make in a way that is different from each drawing I might have done or each photo I might have done. It feels like it has made me make art in a way that like is so intended for other people. The thing that I think it's changed is the way I think about just like the people that will interact with it. It's such a gift to be able to think of and make something that like somebody is going to then go make memories about and like and do and have fun with their friends. So I think it's made me a less selfish, probably creative in some ways in that way.
Friends and Floorheads, this is my interview with Elliott Davis, a Brooklyn-based game designer, artist, and GM, the founder of Many Sided Media, and one of the co-hosts of Talk of the Table. We get into how he built a game from scratch, starting with an idea he sat on for 2 years, a game about slowly turning into a zombie. We talk about his philosophy of keeping rules as lean as possible so you're playing, not constantly referring to the book, and how getting closer to his brothers during the pandemic shaped the way he thinks about games and community. If you enjoy learning how a designer of one of my favorite boxed games thinks, this one's for you.
This is Guy Milner. When I'm not running one-shot games at conventions, you'll find me listening to Tabletop Talk.
Howdy friends, Craig here. My guest today is Elliott Davis. Elliot, otherwise known as More Blueberries, is a Brooklyn-based game designer, podcaster, and artist who loves all things weird and wonderful about the TTRPG industry. He is known for games that are on my shelf like Rom Com Drama Bomb and The Time We Have. When he's not losing sleep over a new game idea, you can hear him play, host, GM, and more on the podcasts My First Dungeon and Talk of the Table, which he produces as part of Many Sided Media. Elliot, welcome to the third floor.
Craig, thank you so much for having me. How you doing?
Good. You're very busy.
I am busy. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I keep busy.
So, and I don't know if this happens to you, but like, there's the guy that I listen to on Talk of the Table. Mm-hmm. Then I come across this game, The Time We Have. I'm like, it took me a little while to connect.
Yeah.
And then, until I did this intro, I didn't realize Rom Com Drama Bomb was yours.
Yeah.
So and I don't know if that's because I'm an idiot or because I just have so many games that I just lose track of who's made what. But, yeah, I have been very, I've ran The Time We Have. I've done it twice on the channel. I have run it in person several times now. It's a big hit. We'll talk about that later. But Rom Com Drama Bomb, I am still working on because it's one of those things where you read it and I go, I know I like this, but I haven't figured out what does it look like with me playing it, right? With me hosting it. Mm-hmm. So I reserve the right after this interview at some point to reach out to you if I have questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Because I think it's a very clever game. And it's one of those games that you just read and laugh, which is wonderful. All right. So I'm going to ask you the same stupid question a guest gets asked on every stupid podcast, but I'll word it a little bit differently. At one point, Elliot, you knew nothing about this hobby, knew nothing about having a sheet of paper with some numbers on it and rolling dice, and then it was put in front of you for the first time. Can you take me there?
Yeah, that was actually not too long ago. It was 2020.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a relatively new TTRPG player, in addition to designer. It was during the pandemic. And I had some friends, my roommate in particular, Colin McClutchy, who is known as Behold. He's a musician who does music for My First Dungeon as well as a bunch of different games. He started playing Pathfinder again and was telling me about it. And meanwhile, my best friend who lives in DC, so we were video chatting and stuff, was getting really into NADPOD and Dimension 20. And then an old friend was also getting into NADPOD, and so the four of us were just kind of talking about D&D. It was just kind of like on everyone's mind, and then all of a sudden it was like, do you guys want to start a campaign? Do you want to play a one-shot, at least to start? And the very first one-shot I ever played was this like classic 5e starter adventure where a wizard turns himself into a sheep, and then you have to like find a way to get him unpolymorphed. And it's just like a level 1 adventure in the woods. And I made a wood elf ranger, which was my first D&D character that then I took into a campaign with that same group. But yeah, 2020 was the first time I ever sat down, and it was virtual. It was my first time playing D&D.
All right, so that means I've got to go back farther. Because I've got to figure out where the soil was that grew you as a designer, right?
Yeah.
So before games, were you a gamer of any type, or was this your introduction to games?
Yeah, I've always been a video game guy.
Okay.
And I have always been a card game guy, like folk card games like Gin Rummy, Gin. My family was like huge Gin Rummy family.
Nice.
And like we would play anytime I was home, like when I went to college and stuff, and just nights of letting scoreboards go up into the hundreds on Gin Rummy, where you're at a point where you're never gonna beat the person who's in first, but you're having a good time anyway.
Sure.
So very like folk card games. My family has also always been like a big activity at parties kind of family, like gamifying their parties kind of thing.
Got
where
it.
It's like, you know, sometimes that would be when I was really little. I remember games like Taboo and party games like that. But sometimes like my uncle would just decide, like we're on vacation, he's like, all right, tonight is talent show night, and him and his kids would, you know, throw together a talent show of the family. And so it was just like always an activity based sort of thing. And then video games, I've been playing video games since I was 5 or 6, and watching
Sure.
my brothers play video games before that. So
How about creative outlets before you discovered this? What did you do creative?
yeah, so I was a big drawing kid. I drew a lot as a kid. And then in high school and college, I forgot I had any creative bones in my body. I focused on math and science in high school, and then I started college as an engineering major.
Wow.
And halfway through, I realized that's not what I wanted to do with my life, and I switched to film and television. And
okay.
my entree back into creativity in a big way was Photoshop and photography. I got really into photo manipulation on Photoshop, and then I got my first camera, and I was shooting for like 3 or 4 years. I was shooting every day, and like
Wow.
photography like unlocked so much in my brain of getting back to creativity. So yeah, those were big ones. And then there's eras of different mediums that I kept bouncing around. This is a thing I was talking to my roommate about the other day. Is like I always had like a creative, from when I got back into making stuff in college, I would find a thing for like 2 or 3 years and stick to it. And it was like photography. And then I got really into 3D animation with Blender, the open source software. I really got crazy about learning that software. And then I got back into drawing, which was what I loved doing as a kid. And then my job was in film and TV. I was like a production assistant. So that was like, creative adjacent.
Yeah.
And then podcasting was my previous career before game design. I worked in podcasting for brands.
So what does that mean? I mean, I know what podcasting is, but what does that job look like?
So it is a job where I started as an associate producer, entry level, and I made an investment podcast for a bank. We made a 5-minute daily investing podcast where I would record with a guy who probably made $500,000 or $1 million in the morning for 5 minutes. I would edit the podcast and it would go out. And I did that for about a year. And then I moved around in that company. Ultimately, we would make podcasts that were sponsored by brands. So brands would give us money. We would make something that ideally didn't sound like it was just an advertisement, but at the top of the episode, it would say brought to you by Marriott Bonvoy was a client I worked with. So we made a travel podcast, but it was brought to you by Marriott Bonvoy.
Yep.
And then my ultimate niche at that company ended up being companion podcasts for film and for television,
Nice.
film and television. But that was like the last few projects I did there were companion podcasts for television.
So you start playing D&D.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you and I are a little similar, Elliot, and I have this terrible habit, like I find something and I just go down the hole, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to understand everything about it. I want to teach myself about it. I want to read every book on it. So it sounds like you're very similar. Did that happen pretty quickly with role-playing games after you played that D&D, or was there a gap?
Yeah, so it started, I got the D&D bug, I would say, first. Like, as soon as we started our campaign, I then wanted to run a campaign, and I bought the Ravnica setting guide, the Magic the Gathering setting, ported over to D&D, which I still think is like one of the best settings for D&D ever. It was so fun. And I had a much more disposable income because I was still a salaried employee, and I became a buyer of books. And so I bought a bunch of the D&D books, and I would read them voraciously. Like I would read them cover to cover, and I would sticky note magic items I wanted to build villains around and stuff like that. Like I got so into it. And then my roommate again, Colin, showed me a video from Dicebreaker. Rest in peace, Dicebreaker. And Dicebreaker video called 10 TTRPGs that are not D&D. And that was the sort of first exposure for me, was like, he was talking to me about like, oh, there's this game Blades in the Dark that like is like set in this sunless city, and he was pitching me on it. He was like, I think I'm going to pick it up and like maybe run it for our D&D group. Oh, Blades in the Dark tattoo. Hell yeah. That rips. And so that then led to my exploration on the internet of like other TTRPGs. Hold on, there's stuff other than D&D, and it does different stuff. And then through TikTok, there was Beggar Talk as like a community on there where it comes from a Facebook group where it was like, I am begging you to play something other than D&D, and then it became a TikTok community with like people like Jordan the GM, Michael Matthews, Kendo of Tales Yet Told, and Samantha Lee, Goblin Mixtape. People that are now collaborators of mine, which is really wild.
That's cool.
It rules. And so that, and then the final piece of the like getting out of D&D and into other RPGs cocktail was a local game store in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, called 20-Sided Store. Was a store that me and my roommates were into board games, and like I actually hadn't been a big board game kid either. Like I played some classics and then card games like I mentioned, but then we would play Catan and then get into other board games. And so 20-Sided Store, owned by Lauren Belenko, who's incredible, had a really robust indie RPG section. And
that's awesome. The
first book I ever picked up, because I would just go in there and like flip through them as we were coming out of lockdown, sort of like in 2021 when we were, half in, half out. And the first non-D&D TTRPG I ever bought was Kids on Bikes. I bought that book.
Nice. That's a good purchase.
Oh, it's awesome. And I read through it. And then through TikTok, discovered the itch community and the TTRPG Twitter community. And that's when like smaller games came to me. The first non-D&D game I ran, I believe, was Honey Heist. Through itch.
Grant Howitt.
Grant Howitt ran that for two of my friends. And then shortly after was Scurry by oh my god, what is Stout Stoat Press is what they're now called. They had a different name back at the time. Scurry is a incredible game. I definitely recommend. It's about animals in the Scottish Highlands in a post-human sort of world.
Oh, nice.
And there's like remnants and stuff. And it has a great shrinking die mechanic that makes the game feel really fast-paced as it goes. So I ran that for my D&D group. Meanwhile, my friend Colin ran Blades, and so all of a sudden I was playing 3 campaigns of D&D, doing one-shots of like Scurry, Blades, Honey Heist, and then I did a mini campaign of Kids on Bikes not long after that. So it just went quickly from like, we're doing D&D all the time to, hey, I have a new game to show you. And luckily, like, there are 2 funny problems, and sorry, I'm rambling. There are 2 funny problems that emerged online that I could see when I got into D&D and stuff. 2 things people talk about a lot. One is nobody wants to GM in my group. I'm the forever GM. And 2 is nobody wants to play a different game in my group. We only play D&D. And I feel very blessed that my group was 3 rotating GMs and then like 3 other players. Like we had 3 campaigns going for 2 years pretty consistently every week. And then players that were always game to try a new game. Like when I had a game, and then, we'll get into this, I'm sure, but like when I started designing, people who were down to play test because they were like already into indie games. Yeah.
So you went down the rabbit hole like we just talked about, right? And just dove right in, which is cool. thinking back over the last several years, what games blew your mind? So things that you picked up and they kind of changed how you thought about the hobby. Did you have anything like that come across?
Wow. You know, it's funny. I used to have all my games on my shelf near my desk, so when I got asked questions like this, I could go look. But now they're upstairs because I live in a shared game sicko house. But some of my favorites are up here. I'll tell you what. A couple that come to mind. Orbital Blues. Orbital Blues was a book I picked up at my first Gen Con. I went to Gen Con first as a fan in 2022, I believe, was my first year at Gen Con. And I picked up Orbital Blues, and that book blew my mind. That was kind of the thing where I was like, oh my God, this book is like a really magical special object, and every bit of it is about this game and about this vibe in such a delicious way. Honey Heist really blew my mind. I mean, I know I mentioned Honey Heist, like that to me, when I ran it for my friends, we ended up like having a sort of emotional climax to it. And I remember having a real thought to myself as I thought over it. I was like, that one page of probably like 75 words or 100 something words just did that. That's the coolest shit in the world. That's the coolest shit in the world that you can do that. And then there are like Portal at Hill House. Was one of the first solo games I ever picked up.
Interesting.
It's by Travis D. Hill and Lindy Ferris Hill. And it's a A6 little zine where you are it's like a cosmic eldritch horror where you're exploring a house and you're like drawing the map of the house. That game blew my mind. Also because solo play was like a thing I didn't understand going in. Wow, what are some of the other ones? Thursday by Ellie Seats was my first encounter with the No Dice, No Master system by Avery Alder and Ben Rosenbaum. That was my first encounter with the No Dice, No Master system. And Thursday was a zine game that I picked up at the game store. And it was a Russian Doll, the TV show, inspired time loop game about like 20-somethings in a city experiencing a time loop, and it used No Dice, No Masters. And that idea of like a token economy game really blew my mind, which you can see the DNA of in Rom Com Drama Bomb. Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast is a game that like really exploded my brain and design possibility. So many beautiful games.
So, and this is the part that I find very fascinating. So, up to this point, you and I have a lot of parallels, right? Where, like when I played as a kid, which I'm considerably older than you, so it was a long, long time ago. And then I took like several decades off and did the adult thing. And then during COVID, I rediscovered role-playing games from my college and high school days. And I did the same thing you did, which is, holy shit, look what's out here. Look what's possible, right? Because I left like D&D and GURPS and then came back to, Blades in the Dark and all these other games. Where we differ is I've never had the desire, want, or need to make a game. So that's what I want to understand about you. At what point do you start thinking, I want to make something? And where do you think that comes from?
Yeah. Fall, winter of 2021, end of 2021. I am about 2 years, a little under, into playing games. Probably 6 months into really being a freak about collecting indie TTRPGs. There are a few moments that I feel like I can identify that were like, oh, I really want to make it. One was I watched Samantha Lee crowdfund Anamnesis and talk about the development of Anamnesis on TikTok. I was like following Sam.
Nice.
And I watched that very indie from fan to creator pipeline kind of that they were on. And I was like, oh, I see how I could walk that path. And then there was another TikTok creator called Disaster Tourism, who I believe still makes games. Kirby, I believe, is their name, the person behind Disaster Tourism. But they were really big on TikTok in 2020, 2021. And one of the things they did was talk a lot about how they think about game design. And there's a video they made where they were like, one of the things I do when I don't have inspiration is I look at objects around my house and ask myself, how can I turn it into a game?
Interesting.
And the first game I made was a game called Abominations, which uses Scrabble tiles. And so that kind of thought came from this impulse of like, look around my house and see what I can make a game out of. But that impulse to create, I think, has just been with me in like since deciding to like pursue a creative life. And like as a kid, like that was in me when I was really young. I lost it for a while, but like photography, I wanted to just shoot and put stuff out. And I made like my Instagram and my company name, More Blueberries, was just originally my Instagram in college based on a very stupid joke with a friend. And I spent like 3 years, not every day, but very consistently trying to do every day, would edit the words More Blueberries, Photoshop them into a photo. And I did that all the time. And I don't think I realized when I started that the impulse in me was like, just make it and put it out, just make it and put it out.
Yeah.
And it created this sort of habit in me of like, of creation, of making stuff, of putting it out. And so I think then I really realized that like what I want from my career in my life is to make things. And then when I found games and I saw the indie side of it, I was like, oh, I can do that. Like I see the path, I can do it. And then Zine Month 2022 was when I started. And that real indie push of like small and first time creators helping small and first time creators like is the reason I'm still making games now. That Zine Month is like it was hugely responsible.
So another moment I think that's always interesting when you're creating games is the moment when you feel like a game designer, which I think is different for every person, right? It's typically not after you make your first game. So when you look at it, when did you finally come to peace with the fact that you make games, that you are a game designer? And not to put a mythical thing around that title, right? Anybody can freaking do it. But do you understand what I'm saying? Where you get that feeling like, shit, I make games.
Right. You know, it's interesting because I'm a real evangelizer of the you made a game, you're a game designer. And I push that on people when they have self-doubt about it. I think probably realistically it came when I made a second game, when I was like, okay, I want to keep doing this. You know, it's like, it's not... I didn't try something and then set it aside. It's like I am actively thinking about games. And by the time I made my second game, I had a notes app full of like 10 game ideas that I wanted to think about and explore. Some of the early nuggets of which became, you know, then Project ECCO and The Time We Have and like other stuff I've worked on. And so when I just started realizing that I was just thinking about it all the time, like that was like where my brain was going. It was like... and then I credit a lot of like meeting Brian Flaherty, who I do Many-Sided Media with, along with Abby Hepworth and Shenik Tessera. But Brian and I had coffee in early 2022, right after I made my first game, and I pitched him on Something's Wrong with the Chickens, which was my second game, and he was like...
I didn't know that was yours.
Really?
Oh my God. I'm so stupid. I bet I got it when I ordered Rom Com.
Probably.
God damn, I am like, don't get old. I'll tell you. That's really funny, because that's a fun game too.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm glad you like it.
That's funny. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Please.
No, that's great. It's funny. This is a thing that is not infrequent in my career, being a podcaster and a game designer. Sometimes people know me because of my games, and then they're like, wait, you're on My First Dungeon, or you're on Talk of the Table? And I'm like, yeah. Or sometimes people just know I'm on Talk of the Table and they know my voice, and then they don't connect that I am the guy from the game. So not uncommon. But what Brian did, you know, is Brian and I became fast collaborators. And one of the early... There are sort of two early shows of faith that really made a career for me. One is on my first game, I made Abominations. I made a 50 zine print run. And I did pre-orders on itch. I didn't crowdfund. And I reached out to 20-Sided Store, this store that I loved so much. And I said, hey, I'm a local designer. I'm new to this. Do you want to stock these games? And I like read Twitter threads about like how to send and wholesale price and all this, and you know, just put myself out there. And Lauren and Luis, who own 20-Sided, were like, yeah, we'll take 10 of them. We love supporting indie designers.
Amazing.
And that was the best shit in the world. That was like the best feeling ever. Is I was just
you
like,
get to walk into your store and see your game on the shelf. That's a big fucking deal.
yeah, scratch what I said before. That was probably the moment where I was like, oh my God, game designer guy. Like it was like when I could take my mom visiting New York City to the store and be like, look, that's my name on that shelf. But the other second showing of like real faith that really bolstered me in those early days is that Brian and I, who became just fast friends and fast collaborators, he invited me onto my first dungeon in its third season. So they had played D&D, they had played Honey Heist, we became friends, and then he said, you should bring Something's Wrong with the Chickens on the podcast. And it wasn't even out yet. It was like draft version. And he was like, I know a bunch of people in the comedy scene and we're going to like cast that out. And I was like, holy shit. Oh my God. Which is like, it's so funny. The like starstruckness I had for like being on a podcast now, having then been a part of Many Sided and making it for years. But at the time it was like, wait, you want to play my game on a podcast and you want to bring a bunch of funny people in the room to do it? That's cool.
That's really, really cool. So my last question, and then we'll take a break and talk about the time we have. You were a creative person before you started making games, but now you've been making games for several years and you've got several under your belt. Apparently, I own all of them. I just didn't know they're all yours. As a creative, what do you think designing games specifically has done to change you as a creative person? Is there things that designing games has been truly unique and kind of helped form the artist that you are?
Ooh, definitely. There's a conversation we've had with a few different people on Talk of the Table, and I can't remember who offhand right now we first started having this with, but there's an amazing thing about games in that when you make a game, you're making half a conversation. Right. You know, you're making an incomplete piece of art that the people at the table will finish for you every time, and it's like the most. It feels like it has made me make art in a way that like is so intended for other people, in a way that like all of the like photos I was taking and drawings I were doing, those were me, and those were like, hey, please, see my vision, see my creativity. And like, don't get me wrong, there's a huge amount of that in my game design practice too. But the thing that I think it's changed is the way I think about just like the people that will interact with it. It's such a gift to be able to think of and make something that like somebody is going to then go make memories about and like and do and have fun with their friends. So I think it's made me a less selfish, probably creative in some ways in that way. And I think it's also like there's so many pieces, and this is true of a lot of creative forms, like film is was my first career out of college, and film is a many-pieced creativity, and games are too, and games are many pieces of creativity that I loved throughout my life, and it's probably why I've stuck with it longer than anything. Is just that it combines so many different ways of looking at a thing. I think that like you have to think about it holistically and zoomed out, and you have to put it through the filter of like other people are going to interact with this. I think about like the object of games is a huge thing for me, and like we'll probably talk about this with the time we have, especially like it's just I feel like I grow more with each game I make in a way that is different from each drawing I might have done or each photo I might have done.
The analogy that I got one time with an interview, and I can't remember who said this, but it has stuck with me, is making a musical instrument. Is very much like, I'm not going to play this. Right. Someone else is going to play this and make it theirs. And I think it had to do with letting go. Once you design the game, let it go, and then nobody can play your game wrong, even if they play it differently than you expected them to. And just those ideas, I think, are super interesting. But I think it's really cool for you as an artist to go. We think of it as so personal, right? We think about photography and drawing, and it's super intimate and super personal. But to realize that art is art because of the viewer, right? Because of the listener and because of the player. And I think that's very, very cool. So guys, the Insider Insight series allows me to sit down with designers, developers, artists, writers, and creators and learn how they approach their work. I try to understand their process, inspiration, and the methods for crafting their creations. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back from this break, it's time for me to ask questions about the time we have.
Hello, my name is Sam Dunewald, and I'm here to tell you about Dice Exploder, my tabletop RPG design podcast where each week I take a single game mechanic and break it down with a friend. Come listen to me talk to Alex Roberts about love and pity, John Harper about elegance and layout, and Mikey Ham about, what else? Exploding dice! It's Dice Exploder, breaking down RPG design one mechanic at a time. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
I think it was the crowdfunding where this first fell onto my radar. And I'm a huge For the Queen fan, right? And I'll never forget. So like when people ask me like what games blew your mind, For the Queen was one of those games that blew my mind. And other ones descended from the Queen have also blown my mind. But just this idea of we are inherently storytellers in our DNA, and that we can have something that brings that out without having a GM, running. That's, so I read the blurb on your card. Let me just read this blurb from your site, because not everybody might know this game. The Time We Have is a game about what it means to be a brother, about all the complexity, vulnerability, and the joy that comes with it. It is a storytelling card game played on opposite sides of a closed door, centered on a conversation about saying goodbye. It guides you through the tragic, intimate story of two brothers and the final days before one of them turns. Take turns drawing cards, asking questions, and processing this change together. Once the door is closed, your story begins. In the end, it is up to the surviving brother. Do you open the door? So I'm like, holy shit, that sounds great. You caught me at a great time because I was starting to get into duet gaming, both like one GM, one player, and then, GM-less duet playing. So I was like, fuck it, backed it, sold, right? And then I got your PDF and I was like, oh, holy shit, like this is something. I was expecting another Descended from the Queen game. And this, yes, there's some DNA there, right? I don't know how something like this exists if we didn't make For the Queen, but
Totally.
It's not the same. And just a real quick aside, your PDF for playing the game with the cards and the little guide to go from card to card, and it takes me back to the beginning.
Oh, yeah?
Like, super awesome.
I'm so glad.
Playing it online is so easy because of that.
That really means a lot.
Dude, it was a big deal. It was a really, like, as soon as I figured it out, I'm like, oh Christ, now I can do it on the channel. This is even better. But what I like to do here, Elliot, is try to go to like the day before or the hour before the acorn fell from the tree, right? So at some point, something got into your head that ended up becoming The Time We Have. Yeah. And I want to try to go back to that moment. What was the initial seed, you think?
So it's interesting because this is this goes back to that notes app I was talking about in our first segment, right, of the note of game ideas in that first year of being a game designer. There was a note in there that was solo game about processing someone turning into a zombie. And that was the full sentence of it. It was just like, what would that be like if you had to process that? Like, what does that actually feel like, thinking through it? And I didn't touch the idea for probably a year and a half, 2 years. And then what pushed me to pull it back out exactly? I'm trying to remember, really. I did play in that interim, I guess I'll say. There's a few things that probably connect to in that interim. The pandemic happened. Well, no, this was off after the pandemic, but the pandemic was on my mind a lot about this, thinking about the time over the pandemic. I got a lot closer with both of my brothers. Me and one of my brothers are like best friends, and we have been for a long time. But me and my brothers and my dad, partway into the pandemic, made a concerted effort we'd talk on the phone weekly. And like we did like a TV club in place of a book club where we would watch TV shows, and we've kept it up for 6 years.
That's so cool.
We're in 2026. We started in 2020. We're now every other week because weekly got tough after a while. But so I think it was like getting closer with like feeling more connected to like my brothers, and like feeling more connected to like men in my family is also, there's a huge part of this game that is about masculinity. And then in 2024, is that right? 2024, I made Rom Com Drama Bomb, and I quit my job. That's when I went full time into games. Was the beginning of 2024, and I was like, what are these ideas that I've had that I've wanted more time to work on? And that idea popped up to me, and I was also thinking a lot more about like duet gaming. Star-Crossed is also to, you know, Alex, as if it wasn't enough that Alex Roberts was genius enough to make For the Queen. She also made Star-Crossed.
Which does not get the attention it deserves.
It doesn't. It's a brilliant game. So duet gaming was also on my mind. And this, I kept thinking about like, okay, the next update to that note on the Notes app was like, now it's a 2-player game about, one person is a zombie and you're processing it. And I started thinking about this idea of, I was thinking about decks of cards a lot. You know, I've designed a handful of solo supplements for like Soul Muppet. I think the Wanderer I had just written, which was deck of cards based. And I just was thinking about deck of cards a lot. And I was like, you could take a deck of cards and you could split the suits, and you could have half these cards, and like, you could have a prompt for if you draw them, and you could have a prompt for if you pass it, and like maybe it's a choice every time. And so like that initial seed of that starts getting developed, and then I'm like, okay, it's a book. Over the course of this year in the summer, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make this game. I'm gonna make this game. I'm excited about it. And then I can't tell you what the moment was because I don't remember, but there was the moment. What it is it was the moment that it went from this is an idea I'm exploring to this is a game I'm making, and that moment was when I said the characters are brothers. Like,
so I want to pause here for just a second, Elliot, because this is super important to me, because you are very, very prescriptive in the game.
Yeah.
You don't say you're two people that know each other. You don't say you can be siblings.
Yeah.
You don't say you could be, you know, father, child, mother, child. You specifically say you have to be brothers.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that was an early choice.
Yeah. It was an early, so it's interesting because it was in the seed of the idea didn't have it. But when I decided I was making it, that's what pushed me over the line into I have to make this game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have thought a lot about this, and I have a lot of thoughts on why it was happening at that moment. I think that there were things in game design that I was watching and learning from and getting excited about. And one of those things was just generally the concept of specificity. I think specificity and creativity is really important. Specificity in art. Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, I mentioned, is a game that was really influential on me. Pre-generated characters in that did a lot for me. We played that on the podcast in 2023. September of 2023, we put out a series of it. And that specificity of character unlocked something in me where I was like, oh, that's important. Yeah. That's really important, actually. That's actually really important, and this game doesn't exist without that specificity, and it's not as impactful. And when there's also a I'm jumping around here, but there's also an inspirational point that I was recently reminded of because I taught one semester of a podcasting class last fall, and I was building my curriculum, and there's a Song Exploder episode. Song Exploder is a fantastic podcast where they break down songs beat by beat, and they had John Batiste on as the guest, and John Batiste in it talks about how the song is We Are, I believe is the name of the song, and it is... He talks about how like so much of the content and aesthetic and sound of the song is tied to the Black experience, and he then says that the specific is universal. He's like, to get at universal relatability, you have to tap into the specific because everybody has.
Oh, that's super
their
interesting.
own specific, you know, and don't think I realized I listened to that podcast for the first time probably a decade ago, and
Right.
I don't think I realized how much that idea has kind of stuck with me, and I'm sure it's come from other angles
Right.
too. But so I get to this idea of brothers, and I'm like, that is what takes this game from being cool to compelling. It's like it's a cool idea, a 2-player game about somebody becoming a zombie, and it's probably even sad a lot of the time. It's probably sad, but it is compelling if it is brothers. It is like there's an oft repeated piece of advice, and I went to film school, did some screenwriting in film school, and they talk about write what you know. That's kind of everyone's piece of advice when you're getting started is write what you know, write the thing that only you can write. And a relationship I have a lot of experience with is brothers. It's like I have 2 brothers, and then I have a younger foster brother, and like so I have just a wide range of brother experience in my life. And so that was the turn. It was just like, okay, this is a game about brothers ultimately.
Yep. So we see it germinate. We see it get more specific, right? What was like? So there's things like the decision on the door, the physicality of the game.
Yeah.
When did that start coming? Because it sounds like the passing of the cards was relatively early. You were thinking about what does that mean, but when did the door become a thing?
Yeah, I think when it became a 2-player game, there was a thought I had about splitting a deck of cards and either drawing them or passing them under a door. And I think that the idea of the isolation of that, and this is where I think like there's some pandemic stuff in there of like quarantine, isolation, and separation and stuff. And I think I found myself really compelled by scenes in zombie media like this, where one person is infected and one person is not. Yeah. And there's a thought I remember having of just like, we don't really get to spend a ton of time with that. In a lot of zombie media, by the time you realize somebody has turned, it's too late. They have lied about it or kept it secret, and you have minutes, maybe hours. And I sort of had the thought where I was like, if that was me, I would tell the person right away. I'm like, I would tell the person because I would want to, deal with it or talk about it or have all the time we could, before it happens. So there was part of it for me that was just like, zombie media doesn't get this moment right in my mind, and I want to expand on it. Yeah. And so I think that. And when I was thinking about playing cards and what you can do with playing cards, that's when the door came in. And then it's interesting because the door piece is what changed it from a book to a deck of cards. Because when I was thinking about it as like we got closer to the fall and I was like, I am going to crowdfund this. I was telling people it was going to be a book. And I was saying it was going to be a book that on one half you had the survivor prompts and you flip the book over, and on the other half you'd have the infected prompts. Because I was really interested in that kind of production. Yep. And then I kept coming into this problem when I was talking about it where I'm like, do you slide the book under the door? Is it 2 copies of the book you have to play? Like, you have to do this like whole reference of like the cards. And I was like, it's a deck of cards. It's a deck of cards. It has to be a deck of cards. And this is, Brian always makes fun of me because I have had 2 Zine Month crowdfunders personally for games I've designed, and both became 50+ page books, 60+ page books, and I don't know how to make a small game. And so it was funny because with this game, when I was first talking about it, I was like, it's just going to be a book. It's just going to be a book. It's going to be simple. And Brian was like, you maybe want to consider doing a deck of cards. It'd be sick and put it in a box. And then it was finally like, yeah, okay, it does have to be a deck of cards. So the door came pretty early. As soon as it was a 2-player game, I think I was thinking about the door.
So for those of you listening that are not familiar with the game, there's many things that I love about this game, and you don't have to watch my APs of it on the channel, but what's nice is after the credits, after we finish playing, we have some really good conversations about the game where I share a lot of my thoughts. But another small thing that had a big impact on me, Elliot, and I want to know at what point this is, was the idea of different doors. So you get a deck of doors. It's a series of cards that have different doors on them with a little bit of a blurb of flavor text, not prescriptive text, flavor text on the other side. And having played this game now 4 or 5 times, there's times where the infected is inside and isolated by themselves. There's times when the infected is outside and the survivor is inside, and that changes everything. And so when did you start thinking that you had a lot of play space with the idea of the door?
Yeah, it's I mean, this is an inspiration kind of straight from For the Queen, because For the Queen has queen cards. As for any listeners who doesn't know, there's like 20 in the new edition different drawings of queens, and the thing that blew my mind about that is how much just that piece of art of a queen gave you setting, time period, tone, like. It was a single choice that changed the game dramatically. And I was like, that's crazy. And then when this became a deck of cards, I was thinking a lot, about the production of For the Queen as like a model. And I was like, what is that in this game? It's not brother cards, you know what I mean? There's not like, there wasn't an obvious thing for me. And I was like, it's probably different kinds of zombies. What does that mean? And then it was like, oh, it's got the door is the image of this game. The door is the central image of this game. So here's what we'll do. I was like, the writing on the back is, and this is what I told all my writers, is I was like, it's going to be the equivalent to a piece of environmental storytelling you would find in a video game. That was the brief. It was like, give me a like 1 to 200 word thing that you would find in the video game of this setting that would imply time period, rough genre, and any interpretation you want to give me of a zombie virus, and I encourage you to be weird. And I told all the writers, I said, you can go like a twist on classic, you can go a light twist, but like I encourage you to be weird. All the designers that I got on that project are such incredible people. Really cool. A lot of them are really close friends, and like I was like, go weird with it. I really am excited. And then we got to do kind of like a call and response bit with it, where then that writing went to the artist, and I said, make a single door that fits on a back of a card that reflects this writing, whatever that means to you.
That's so cool.
The only thing you have to do is it has to be a door in the center. And as you know from all the different ones, it's like it created this beautiful effect of like a menagerie of different doors, but it feels so cohesive because it's like it's that limitation of like just put a door in the center of the card. Yeah.
Well, and like For the Queen, the players also impact that, right? So it's how they receive the art and what they do with that art, which is absolutely incredible.
This is a fascinating thing you just said. I want to call out, actually, is you said that sometimes the infected brother is outside and sometimes he's inside. That is something I have never thought about, and I love that is something that that connected with, like that is a choice that like the different door cards inspired for you. Very much so. Is so interesting. Like that,
and I got to tell you, like, it changes everything, right?
It absolutely would. Yeah, that's crazy.
The idea that, because opening the door has 2 different meanings in those things. This is where you started to blow my mind with your game. Like opening the door, the question of, do I open the door? Am I opening the door to let the disease in? Or am I opening the door to let the disease out? Yeah. Which are 2 different decisions, because decision 1 is my singular decision as the survivor. Am I going to sacrifice myself and let my brother in? The other one is, am I going to let my brother out and potentially impact the whole goddamn world? And
that's, dude. So this is lovely, and this is actually right in the pocket of what I was talking about. Is it's like I made half a conversation, and you have just kind of blown my mind with some details that I've played this game probably 6 or 7 times, and I've never considered the inside-outside implication.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that rules.
Really cool. And that wouldn't have registered with me had I played it once, right? Yeah. Because I played it once, I would have done one or the other. It was the first time that it got flipped, and I don't remember why we flipped it. I'm sure it was because of a door. And after that was my thing. I was playing in person at that time. I was just like, oh, this has changed everything. Changed everything about the character, even though I had some of the same prompts that I'd already seen and stuff like that. Really good. So as you're developing this and you're play testing it, do you remember when it became a game? So that moment when you're like, I'm not fiddling now, I might be sanding some corners, right? But like, this is the game. Do you really remember at what point that you knew that?
There was early development. I was writing prompts, and my roommate and one of my best friends, Viditya Valetti, who's an incredible designer in his own right and huge inspiration to me. He and I were talking a lot about this game while I was developing it, and I was like, I don't know whether the POV of how you read the cards is first person or if the cards are telling you something. You know, because in For the Queen, the POV is the cards are saying you.
Yep.
And in the time we have, the cards say I. And like when you read the card, you read it as I. And that decision came from a playtest with 5 half index cards with each kind. I wrote like just a quick set of questions in both voices, and Vidi and I played it sitting on opposite sides of a like glass door he had in his apartment, so we could kind of see each other.
Sure.
But you did get that muffle effect, and that was like the first experience of like actually that. And I remember we tested the U POV, and it was like, it was fine. And then we tested the I POV, and like when we got to the ending, I it was deeply affecting, and it was only like 4 or 5 cards, and that was where I was like, oh, this has the sauce. This is this is a game. That was like, it was just that like 4 or 5 card playtest where I was like, okay, yeah, this is doing something.
Every time I've played it, it's incredibly personal. Personal for both myself and the person that I was playing it with, which is, I think, part of the reason it's so entirely special. So here's another thing that initially in the first play I kind of struggled with. Me and the person I was playing with kind of struggled with. We just made the decision and went with it, and then I have proclaimed that I think it's better this way, right? Which gets into the once it leaves your hands, then idiots like me get to play with your game. Is to not read the card aloud.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when we first started playing it, the first time I played, we started reading the card to each other out loud, and then we stopped. And like it changed everything for the way that the game played by not reading it out loud, because again, you have another layer of interpretation that's happening. And the other thing that started happening is, because even when we play it online, we block each other's faces.
Yep.
So even though we're playing online, we can't see each other, which is a huge part of this game, by the way. You cannot see your partner.
Absolutely.
And when I played it in person without a door, we sit back to back for that reason. But and there's no I go, you go either, which I think is key to this game as well. Isn't it nice to have somebody explain your game to you, Elliot? Jesus Christ. Yeah, no shit, Craig. I made the fucking thing. But what happens every time is I don't know whether they're working off a prompt or not. Like things start happening 2/3 of the way through the game where I'm not sure what's happening right now, and it stops even being a card game at that point. And that's happened more than once. I don't know if you've experienced that or not.
I definitely. Sorry, I'm adjusting. I definitely have. I think it's so interesting you bring up this idea of like the difference between reading the prompts aloud and not. And I have both done APs where I've read them aloud, and I've done them where I don't. And I've watched APs where people do, and I've watched them where they don't. And I think there's 2 interesting factors here. I think that it's like there's a level of comfortability with this kind of role play. That I think when people are reticent, reading them aloud helps a lot to get into.
I agree.
But the time that I played where we didn't read it aloud was when I played with Dylan Appelian on One Shot. And that I loved that story we told, and it like did take such interesting directions, because you're right, because then it is not a question you're asking, it is a prompt that you are interpreting, and then you might start with an accusation instead of a question. You might, just say something that then, and that I think like also helps when you have somebody who you have a role play chemistry with and a practice with, where when you toss the weird pitch out there, they're gonna still hit it. You know what I mean? They're not gonna say, "Wait, what did you say?" It's like they're just gonna roll with it. So I love that, and I absolutely think that like that is I think my probably preferred way of play. I don't think I don't remember if it's prescriptive in the rules to say the questions out loud.
And I'm glad it's not.
Yeah, but I love that is a place you went automatically because I think it's such a fun thing. So yeah,
so you prompted something for just really quick. And now I'm remembering a little bit of my history with your game. What it was is I came across the Kickstarter and didn't pull the trigger, but listened to you and Dylan play it, and then could not pull the trigger fast enough.
Whoa!
So yes, APs sell games because
I'm such a believer. Yeah.
Yeah. So because I was like, God, that's because I just had Dylan on the show. It hasn't been released yet while we're talking, but I just literally just had them talk about the new game or the new book. And that's what it was. It was listening to you and Dylan play it. That was just like, holy shit. And I went back to it and pulled the trigger. But anyway,
that's
we're talking
awesome.
about, it's so cool, right? About reading the cards. That's what you were talking about.
Yeah. It's like, it's so interesting because it's like, it's when you think about, when I think about designing this game, like writing the rules, it was all about, keeping them as lean as possible. Like I wanted you to, in the For the Queen style, get through these rules and be playing as quick as possible. And like while you're reading the rules, you're also kind of starting playing like in the For the Queen way. And so I think the leanness and the like keeping that as tight as possible is what sort of leaves room for what a lot of people in game design call the fruitful void, where like what players fill in that the rules don't cover. And this idea, like two things we've talked about, the idea of inside outside is a fruitful void thing that like I did not put any directive for, and then whether you speak or read the word silently is also, you know, it's like that's just like dependent on the person, which is so interesting.
The last thing that I want to talk about, if we can, is another thing. I'm blowing some serious smoke up your ass because I really liked your game.
Hey, I'll take it.
If you haven't figured that out yet. I really loved the reading a card and passing it. And so for those of you listening, there's cards where you will read it and it'll say something along the lines like, you're hearing me cough, and you slide it under. When did that concept of I am telling you what you hear as you pass it under, when did that start to come around?
So that I think was from when it was playing cards still. The idea was like give each card a prompt if you pull it and decide to say it, or if you pass it and they have to respond to it. And so it was always a hope for me that like it was like if you can't see them, how can you make this escalation into being a zombie real? And initially the thought was like, oh, it is just like signs of the infection getting worse. Yeah. And then like when I sat down to actually properly writing the game, it was like, these are just sensations. And like, this is immersion and this is tension and like anything that it's like, it helps you create the image of what's happening on the other side of the door. It's like one of my favorites is You Smell Food is one of my favorite of those perception cards, because it's one of those that is like it didn't necessarily make sense to put in. It wasn't like an obvious need, and then I've now watched it in play both be genuine, just like, oh, I am cooking food, and I've also watched it often be, I now hunger for you. Yeah. I smell food because I'm smelling you, and that's like that's so fucking
beautiful.
Cool. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, and there are other things that I really enjoyed too. I thought I was done, and I'm not. Is
no, you're good.
Is the prescriptive stuff that the infected will get, like the restrictions on how they can speak and how much they can speak, and silences and things, which again, when you are the survivor, you're not reading these cards, right? And you're experiencing it. And I gotta tell you, man, you get that feeling of when you're playing the survivor, like, I'm losing my brother. They are degrading. So just outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So everybody knows it. Oh, quick question, because we kind of talked about it a little bit on email. So I had the AP out, I don't know, for like a month or so, and then it popped, which on my channel doesn't take much because I'm small. But I remember reaching out to you going like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
Right. So, and you told me that somebody had featured it and it had a huge impact on the game. Can you talk about that real quick?
Yeah. So this is actually Brian on the Many Sided Media Instagram made a reel about the game that just hit the algorithm in the best way possible in March. This was around in March, I think. And it now has almost 1 million views on Instagram.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah. It has
Shit.
continued to, the comment I left on that video saying where you can buy it, and it's been out of stock for about 1.5 months now, and reprints thankfully have just arrived, and like we'll be selling them again soon. But that comment even that I put for like where you can find the game got like 6,500 likes, and it gets 20 more every day. It just caught the algorithm in the most beautiful, and it's a great video. Brian is great on camera.
Yeah.
Brian's my favorite guy to bring to a con because he's so good at selling. He's just like, he's so charming, and just like he finds a thing to say about each game. And like most of my pitches, if you ever hear me pitch at a con, are developed off of something I heard Brian say, because he's just got that like
the
sense.
gift.
Yeah, he's just got the gift. So it just caught fire in a beautiful way that honestly like really made my first quarter in a huge way income wise, and like sold the first print run out. The first print run's been I mean, there's a few stragglers out there at some stores, but like largely the first print run is sold out in really less than a year, which is way more than I could have hoped for.
Yeah. It and you're right about the consistency, because it's that AP is consistently one of the top performers on my channel. And it's awesome. Had a long trail, right? So we're into June now. So several months of it being usually my top 5 for the month, every month, which is cool.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Because
in the same way that AP sells games, I love when games can also give the lift to APs. That rules.
Yeah. I mean, it's why I do this. If by having APs on my channel, it gives me a chance to play. But more than anything, there's no ampersand games on my channel, right? And it just really gives me a chance to feature. Like it's the bad game. Like you people, there's so many goddamn good games out of here. Let me show you how they play. So that's my thing. So guys, we're gonna take one more break. When we get back from this break, we're gonna stop talking to Elliot about the shit he makes. I want to find out what he consumes. I smell food. We'll be right back.
Attention all floorheads, gather round. I have a quest for you. You can simultaneously show your love for the show and embark on rewarding adventures. Head over to drivethrurpg.com, your one-stop shop for all things gaming. Whether you're looking for rulebooks, maps, art, or epic tales to enhance your gaming experience, it is that one-stop shop. Now, in the show notes, there's a unique affiliate link. Every one of your purchases directly supports Tabletop Talk if you use that link. It's like casting a powerful spell that helps us keep the podcast going strong. So next time you're itching for a new adventure, follow the affiliate link in our show notes or bookmark it now in your browser. It can be your portal to everything on DriveThruRPG. Now let's get back to the show, but please support the show by using that DriveThruRPG affiliate link next time you are shopping at the site.
So what has become on my podcast is kind of bookends. I start the podcast where we did, which is who is this person? Who were they before they started making games? How did they get into games? And, what are they as a creator? Then we talk about 1 or 2 games that you've made, which we'd really dive into, and we go through the entire life cycle and the path that you went through there. At the end, I'd like to figure out what turns you on, right? So is there a book, a video, another RPG, a prestige TV show, something that just took over your brain and you have just been voraciously consuming and can't stop telling somebody about? What's your one thing to share?
Oh, my one. It's funny because I did think about this question you pre-sent it to me, and now I'm like, oh, I have 3
everybody
things.
Cheats. So
everybody cheats.
Let's hear 2 or 3.
Let's talk about the most recent one, because the one that I'm really, really obsessed with right now. I am obsessed with the show Widow's Bay coming out right now on Apple TV. Have you seen?
Yes.
I am just getting such a kick out of this show.
It's so good.
It's so good.
And as a horror fan, I'm so in love with it because it's so nice to see comedy being allowed back into horror. Like my wife is not a horror fan, but she is really enjoying it. What's his face from The Americans? Like, he's just brilliant. I think every time I see him, he gets better and better. And then Red Stapler guy, it's just a phenomenal cast. But anyway, this is your one thing to share. What's working for you? Why do you love it?
It's so funny. It's like horror is something I love.
Yeah.
As I think is maybe clear, I am bad at watching it because I get scared. I get like really deeply scared by things. So I've been building up more of a tolerance over the years, and like when I do venture into something, I'm usually, but like I have trouble sometimes sleeping because of things. Widow's Bay is doing this like great thing where it is getting me just enough on the scares, and then like you said, the comedy is so fucking witty and good. The writing is just like, it is whip smart, and like the like punchlines, the way they come, the characters are just so good. Like Patricia is a like all-time character of anything. I am obsessed with how over the top she is, and her episode, which I will not say anything more than her episode, is just like one of the craziest things I've ever seen. It continues to surprise. I'm just like, I love when art surprises me.
Yeah.
It is so, it's surprising me every episode, and like continuing to surprise me. And I'm along for this wonderful ride. And yeah, I am loving Widow's Bay, like loving.
And you nailed it. So there's some shows that you say to a friend, like, you got to get through like 2 or 3 episodes, and then it really starts cooking with gas, right?
Yeah.
And some of the greatest TV shows of all time are that way, where you're like, you stopped watching at episode 2, you were 1 episode away from watching the entire goddamn thing. 2 shows recently for me where that was not the case. I think Widow's Bay episode 1 is one of the best first episodes I've ever seen in a TV series. So much ground is covered. Yeah. The tone of the show is covered. You're introduced to characters that you give a shit about right out of the gate. Like, and it's not just the main characters, it's the side characters, the writer. Like, how much did we learn about
character.
That?
Yeah.
What a great character, right?
Yeah.
And then the way this episode ends with him on the floor in the restaurant, like, just, and the writers are like, this is what this is going to be. Do you want to keep going? You're like, yeah, I want to keep going. The other shows, have you seen Pluribus?
Oh, yeah. I love Pluribus.
That is the greatest first episode of a TV show for me.
That is maybe the greatest pilot episode ever. Yeah. Like, it's
unbelievable.
The joy of Pluribus for me was that I watched it having no idea what it was. I was just like, oh, new Vince Gilligan show. I'll give it a shot. And it really blew my mind.
And if you're like me, which it sounds like you are, you're a big consumer of media, that first episode's a roller coaster, because you're like, what is this show going to be?
What is it?
And then something happens, you go, oh, it's going to be one of those shows. Yeah. And then something else happens in the first episode, you're like, oh, no, it's not that show, it's this show.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, it's not either of those things.
Yeah.
Show.
Wow. It's so funny that it's it's in your mind in conversation with Widow's Bay, because it is. Like, it's like there's a subversion of expectation of genre in both of them in a really brilliant way.
Yeah. No.
That's
agree.
awesome.
Yeah, very cool. What are some of your other ones that you want to share?
Some of the other ones I'm obsessed with lately. There is an album of music by Reye, Raye. It's called This Music Contains Hope. Or This Music May Contain Hope. I keep messing this up. But it's a new album by Reye. It's either called This Music May Contain Hope or This Music Contains Hope. Uh-huh. And it is a 17-song album of pop, but like big band, and has like the energy of going through an epic musical. And it is like a deeply personal album about like her own journey with love and family. And like there's a Hans Zimmer collab in there with like big orchestral stuff.
Holy shit.
And like there's like a little comedy song kind of in there. But it's like, it is a tip to tail joy to listen to. And like you get, like I was talking to Brian about this recently, about how there are not every kind of media and not every piece of media that this is true for, this is true. This is true for, this is true. But there are some pieces of media that are aided greatly by your feeling that whoever made it had a great fucking time while they did it. That they had so much fun doing it.
Yeah.
There's some movies I feel this way about, like Bullet Train is a movie that I really love, and I feel like Bullet Train is a movie where you're like, they had so much fun making that, and that helps. And this album is, and she leaves a lot of character in it and like sort of personal remarks, and like has like an end credit sequence where she talks directly to the audience and stuff. And it just feels like she had so much fun doing it and poured so much of herself into an incredible album. The other thing that like I was really a freak about this year was Expedition 33. I played at the beginning of the year, video game. Claire Obscure. Oh, I don't know if you're a video game guy at all.
I am. Well, not as much as I used to be, but yeah, keep going.
So Expedition 33, it got like a bunch of accolades last year, and it is a turn-based combat game, kind of like Final Fantasy, except there is like real-time events, parrying and dodging and stuff in the turn-based stuff, but like those mechanics are tight and it feels incredible to play, and it's like so satisfying, and the character builds and abilities are great. But that's not what's amazing about this game. What's amazing about this game is that it has one of the most shocking and devastating and incredibly powerful stories I've ever experienced in the video game medium. It's a 3-act game, and each act turn just like blew my mind in a new way, and the characters are incredible, and it like is deeply about grief and making art and what it means to make art through grief. And it's I can't recommend that game anymore. And it's people probably like, it's been recommended, but like that game, I played the shit out of that at the beginning of this year. That really got me.
That's really cool. Speaking of video games, I just saw an article that the Dredge, Eldritch Horror, they're making a movie or TV series based off of it. Like, that's interesting.
Widow's Bay.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'll be interested to see what they do with it, because I have a board game that was obviously inspired by it, where you go out and you catch fucked up fish.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting if they make a game. Elliot, on a Monday night, there's a lot of really fun things to do, like watch the rest of Widow's Bay, but you chose to spend it with me, and I do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Craig. This was a joy.
I'm glad. And for those of you listening, guess what? This is the end. You made it through the whole damn show, and I appreciate you doing that. I hope you have some spoons, so you're taking care of yourself. If you got some extra, take care of a friend.
Hey, are you still here? Look, the podcast is over, and you sat through all of the breaks and bloopers? Well, I mean, if you're here, you might as well run over to patreon.com and become a supporter. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast, too, while you're at it, on whatever platform you're listening to. I do appreciate you sticking around. Take care.